Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us and our this evening for our Save Blind Bay webinar. We're excited to have you. I'm Bridget Wright, the Executive Director of Save the River. And in just a minute, we're going to get started and I'll introduce the panelists. But first, I just wanted to talk about a couple housekeeping items. Unlike a regular Zoom meeting that we're all used to, this webinar, you will not, your cameras will be off, as well as your microphones, and the chat will not be available. However, the Q&A box down at the bottom of your screen is available, and you can enter questions in it at any time starting now. Um, when uh, when we get started, Jake, and after I introduce our panelists, Jake is going to do a presentation for us. Uh, um, and after that, our moderators, Bridget McCann from Thousand Island Land Trust and Emma French from Save the River, they will be facilitating your questions and funneling them to the panelists. So I will get started with our just introducing everybody that's here tonight. And we'll start with Assemblyman Scott Gray, County Legislator Phil Reed, County Legislator Bobby Cantwell. We do have a resident from Dockside neighborhood as well, Jack Burke. And last but certainly not least, Jake Tibbles from Thousand Island Land Trust. And he is going to take it from here.
All right, thank you, Bridget. So I'm just going to share my screen here. Hopefully everything works. All right, we should be good. You should see our first slide here, Save Blind Bay update. Again, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. My name is Jake Tibbles. I'm the Executive Director of the Thousand Islands Land Trust. First, thank you, Bridget, and thank you, Emma and Bridget, for coordinating this evening's webinar. Before we dive in, I believe it's important to highlight a couple points that will kind of hold true throughout the presentation as we move forward managing and navigating this issue. First, in no way are TILT, STR, or the Blind Bay Coalition anti-CBP. While this issue has presented major challenges, we understand the importance of border security. At the same time, we have absolute confidence that there is a path forward where CBP is able to advance its mission without negatively impacting the ecological character or residential fabric of the Thousand Islands. Two, moving forward, our goal is not to endorse any particular site, but to ensure that the community-supported alternative is considered by CBP. Three, this is not a partisan issue. From a political standpoint, Saving Blind Bay has transcended party lines. If we're going to be successful, we need the support of all of our local, state, and federal representatives. This has already proven critically important as we navigated the Blind Bay issue. Okay, let's jump in. First, why does Saving Blind Bay matter? When one looks across the mainland waterfront of the Thousand Islands, there are very few intact natural stretches. Those natural areas that we enjoy today are either state parks, DEC wildlife management areas, or tilt preserves. The majority of the shorelines have been developed for either residential or commercial purposes. For that reason alone, remaining natural areas like Blind Bay play a critical role in sustaining our local wildlife populations, water quality, and scenic beauty. More specifically, Blind Bay is unique in itself. Notably, based on data collected by the Thousand Islands Biological Station, the bay is one of the most productive muskellunge spawning sites in the Thousand Islands. In addition, New York State listed species such as the common tern, northern harrier, American eel, eastern musk turtle, bridal shiner, and the iconic common loon utilize the bay. From an economic standpoint, each spring, Blind Bay acts as a reproduction factory for some of our most sought after sport fish like the northern pike and largemouth bass. Dr. John Farrell, director of the Biological Station on Governor Island, said it best. Not everywhere has that unique combination of physics, chemistry, and biology that make the place like Blind Bay does. For many of these reasons, Tilt made an initial conservation investment in 2016 using federal conservation funding. Using federal conservation funding, Tilt acquired about 16 acres and approximately 600 feet of undeveloped waterfront and associated coastal wetlands. Then in 2021, working with Save the River, Tilt positioned itself to purchase the remaining undeveloped lands in Blind Bay. This was the same site that Customs and Border Protection later identified as the preferred site for its proposed Wellesley Island Border Patrol Station. As you can see to the map to the right, the area that's outlined in yellow was the existing preserve that Tilt acquired in 2016. And the area that's outlined in black is the piece that we acquired successfully in November of 2022. That portion of Blind Bay is the area that's identified as the preferred site by Customs and Border Protection. In February of 2022, CBP formally released its draft environmental assessment for public comment. Understanding the ecological significance of Blind Bay, the river community, including Tilt and Save the River, were taken back by the finding of no significant impact. From a public perspective, this was the first step in the NEPA process. For those who may not be familiar with this process, NEPA stands for National Environmental Policy Act. The act establishes environmental policy and provides framework for planning and decision-making by federal agencies, especially for the construction of projects that have the potential to negatively impact the environment and or local communities. So here's a closer look at what was being proposed and why so many across the river community, Tilt and Save the River, and many of our state, local, and federal representatives, had concerns. Taking a closer look, over 48,000 square feet of building space, including marine storage, boat dock, and ramp, communication tower, fuel depot, perimeter fencing, and high-intensity lights. Below are a few examples of Border Patrol facilities that have been built around the country. A facility of this scale would require dredging, which could disturb legacy toxins, which present health risks to both humans and wildlife. 24-hour light and high-intensity LEDs would create light pollution and could eliminate night skies for 2 or 3 miles. And this scale of development would likely impact surrounding property values, which would ultimately trickle down to impacting the local tax base. These are just a few examples of how this project could negatively impact the environment and our local communities if not cited appropriately. As part of the NEPA process, CBP opened the initial public comment period on March 10th of 2022. Well over 1,000 comments were submitted. For the North Country in the month of March, that's an impressive number of respondents. It quickly became apparent that the river community was unified in their position that the proposed facility did not belong in Blind Bay. And from the start, this issue has and continues to be a bipartisan issue. To this day, every local, state, and federal representative on both sides of the political aisle have pressed Customs and Border Protection to find a community-supported alternative. In order to keep the facility out of Blind Bay and off the immediate waterfront, local and state officials identified an initial solution. With the support of County Legislator Phil Reed, the town of Alexandria proposed that CBP utilize the already impacted acreage on the Bonnie Castle Recreation Center property. This was in response to the river community's call for CBP to consider an alternative to Blind Bay. Unfortunately, CBP declined to evaluate the rec center as a suitable alternative, and in early 2023 identified another waterfront site, Dockside Cottages. Dockside Cottages encompasses approximately 16 acres of open field and about 100 feet of waterfront in the Thousand Islands, just across from Round Island. This aerial shows the area being proposed under the Dockside Cottages site. Embedded in a highly residential area and immediately across from Round Island Association, community members quickly pushed back on this new site. So this map provides a good visual reference of the location of Blind Bay and Dockside Cottages. Blind Bay being the yellow outlined area, Dockside Cottages being the orange color. In yellow, you have the village of Clayton. Finally, 2 years after releasing the draft environmental assessment for the proposed facility, CBP agreed to schedule formal in-person public hearings as part of the public scoping process, part of that NEPA framework that I mentioned earlier. Initially, CBP was only going to allow for written comments limiting in-person public participation. During the June 25th and 26th public hearings, that were made possible by our local and state elected officials, over 800 community members came forward to say no to Blind Bay and Dockside Cottages and encourage CBP to evaluate lands adjacent to Route 81 Cloverleaf. So coming out of those public hearings, for the first time, it seemed as CBP might consider a new alternative, a community-supported alternative. While it's not exact, the yellow circle represents the approximate area being considered. Frustrating matters, a few weeks later, following the public hearings, CBP instructed the Department of Justice to file a declaration of taking for legal access to Blind Bay. After much back and forth with DOJ attorneys and under strong legal advisement from counsel, Tilt made the difficult decision to negotiate right of entry terms. Shortly after, CBP rejected the area adjacent to the Cloverleaf as a viable alternative, stating that the Thousand Islands Bridge presented security concerns. For many of us, especially the staff at Tilt and Save the River and folks across the river community, this felt like a point of defeat. You know, CBP's decision to reject the Cloverleaf area was definitely a major hit. But on Monday, November 25th, Thanksgiving week, then Acting Director Troy Miller at CBP released a formal statement outlining the agency's decision to include the Cloverleaf property in the supplemental environmental assessment. After 3 long years, this truly was the first time it felt like the river community was making progress on this issue. I choose to include this photo of a chestnut-sided warbler to express how many of us felt after this announcement. So Tilt and Save the River just obtained the biological resources report in the bat survey report completed for Blind Bay. Staff are in the process of analyzing the reports to fully understand the conclusions made by Gulf South Research Corporation. Our hope is to release report findings in the coming weeks. We also intend to, one, work with elected officials to monitor CBP's progress with resource assessments at the Tibbles site, and two, track the release of the SEA. Once the assessments have been completed for the Cloverleaf Tibbles site, we anticipate that CBP will release the supplemental environmental assessment. The SEA will identify the site that CBP has selected for the proposed facility. We anticipate this will trigger another public comment period for the SEA itself. Again, another step in that framework, that NEPA framework. If CBP moves forward with the assessment at Tibbles this spring/early summer, it's plausible that SEA could be released late 2025 or early 2026. Finally, it's important that we continue to keep open lines of communications, both with our elected officials, but also Customs and Border Protection and their agency staff, and to the best of our ability, help to keep the river community informed. So last but not least, I'd like to thank all of our Blind Bay Coalition partners. The support has been truly appreciated. There's no question that we wouldn't have been able to accomplish what we've accomplished so far without their participation. So with that, I will hand over the mic to Bridget Wright, Executive Director of Save the River.
Thanks, Jake. It was a wonderful presentation. We've been getting a lot of questions from the river community, how to support this cause and how to stand behind us and what should people do. And right now, specifically, since we're in a bit of holding pattern, how Jake described, now that they've added the third property as an alternate, and we're kind of waiting for them to do the cultural environmental surveys. Right now, it's the most help is number one is supporting the Blind Bay cause itself by donating through the Blind Bay website, which is on the screen right now. It's been a long 3 years and it's going to continue. And it's just really important to be able to have the funding to continue what Tilt especially is going forward with. Also, your Tilt and Save the River could not exist at this time without your membership. We're membership-based organizations, and everybody's membership counts, whether big or small. It helps. It helps us to keep going and keep researching and hanging in there and fighting anything together. So please look at the QR codes on the screen and help Save Blind Bay and our two organizations. Also, is what's really important is to stay engaged. We've had a long winter. People are coming back or waking up, whichever. But it's really important for us all of us together, to stay engaged, keep an eye out for incoming backs. And the best way to do that really is to follow Save the River and Tilt through our e-blast, our social media. We're pretty quick to catch anything new. We will inform you as soon as we know. And then while you're staying informed and while you're keeping track of what's going on, talk to your neighbors and your family, your friends, your smaller communities, and let them know what's going on. We don't want to lose track of anything that's happening. We want everybody to understand what's going on, and we need to keep this in the forefront of the community and in our minds and in our representatives' minds. It just needs to stay forefront. It's a very, very important to just stay at the top of what we're looking at and what we want to prevent. So I think with that, we're going to go into the Q&A now. So I'm going to hand it over to Bridget McCann and Emma French, our moderators, to start the Q&A session.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Bridget. And awesome presentation, Jake. We really appreciate being updated right from the source about what's going on with Blind Bay. So we are going to start the Q&A session. Just as a little reminder, at the bottom of your screen, there should be a Q&A function, and you can tap that and then send in your questions. Bridget and I are going to see them, and we'll do our best to make sure that all the panelists get those questions. And to start, I'm going to let Bridget ask the first question to Jake.
Hi, everyone. So like Emma said, the first question is going to be directed towards Jake. So Jake, can you please reiterate what the NEPA process is and where we are currently at with it? So you can go ahead, Jake.
Thanks, Bridget, and thanks, Emma. So yeah, to reiterate the NEPA process, that's really that federal framework that any agency like CBP has to follow when planning and designing a construction project like the one that's being proposed for the new Wellesley Island Border Patrol station. You'll constantly hear us talking about the release of the SEA, the importance of that supplemental environmental assessment, and that really boils down to the fact that any sites, viable sites in CBP's mind or in the agency's mind that can be put forth for consideration have to be included under the SEA. That means that each site has to be evaluated for its environmental, cultural resources, impact to local communities, and then essentially, from our understanding, those sites are then compared and then one that either ranks the best or is seen as being most suitable to advance the operational needs of the agency is selected. So by adding the Tiba Cloverleaf site, that requires the agency to move forward with additional studies and assessments. Those studies and assessments have to occur during the spring and summer season when wildlife is most active, when you can get access to these properties, when cultural resource and archaeological assessments can be conducted. So that really delayed the release of the SEA, which we had originally thought was going to be released in early 2025. So that essentially pushed that schedule or that time frame back essentially a year. And that's good. That means that this new site will be added in there. That is the site that the community came forward with and encouraged CBP to evaluate. So that was really a big win for our community. And, again, huge shout out to County Legislator Phil Reed, Bobby Cantwell, and also Assemblyman Scott Gray. I mean, they played an integral role in helping move this needle. So that's kind of the NEPA project. Not a NEPA expert, but that gives you kind of a little bit better understanding of what it means and why it's significant.
Thank you, Jake. And there's more about the NEPA process. There's a cool link in the chat. And it's very complicated and hard to understand. I know I've been learning a lot. So any chance that people can take to learn more, even just baseline what that means and what we're doing is really important. So thank you for explaining that, Jake. Our next question is for Bridget, and it's about some of the ecology that goes on in Blind Bay. So the wetlands at Blind Bay, it's one of the few that we have on the St. Lawrence. These are very high quality environments. And so can you, Bridget, just explain why St. Lawrence River wetlands are so important to begin with?
Yes. Yes. Wetlands are more crucial than one would think on the surface. So we do know that wetlands is a habitat for many of our plants and animals that are indigenous, some that are not so indigenous, but it is a breeding ground. It's where birds and migratory birds and fish stop over. It's just a special little area that magic happens for these plants and animals to exist and to spawn, to breed, to rest. However, the wetlands also help with flood control and shoreline stabilization. They filter the water, so they improve our water quality on the river. Not just the quality of the water, but the clarity of the water, because it acts as a water filter or purifier. It also does a lesser known fact is the wetlands actually sequester carbon, and while doing that, it absorbs carbon dioxide that's in the air. It helps to mitigate climate change. So it takes all that extra carbon from greenhouse gases and it filters it for us. It keeps the air clean. So there's just so many wonderful things about wetlands, which is why there's so many protections for them. And we want to keep it that way.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Bridget. And in the chat, we're about to send a link to Dr. John Farrell's muskie presentation that he did during the Save the River Winter Environmental Conference. So that's a great link to click if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that. Okay, so our next question is going to be directed to Scott Gray. So Scott, do you feel that CBP is taking the decrease in border crossings into consideration? And we know that Ogdensburg border crossing is down 30 to 40% in the first quarter of 2025. So go ahead, Scott. Thank you.
That's a good question. Say they're very active still, and they're not going to reduce their footprint if that's the case right now. So considering that, the federal government just got a deal with the Canadian government, the $1.3 billion deal for increased border security on their side. I would not expect the federal government to reduce their presence at all from this point forward, because that's critical in order to maintain that. Part of that $1.3 billion deal that was struck with the Canadian government included a lot of measures that increased border security. They have blackout Black Hawk helicopters that are in the air now. They have, increased staffing on their side as well. So I wouldn't expect that would, supplant, federal government's responsibilities on our side of the border either. So that's the best I can say at this point. I would say that, their presence is pretty strong. So, yeah.
No, thanks for that. And we're getting some more questions kind of about that. So we'll come back later to those questions, but I want to make sure all the panelists have a chance to speak first. So this next question is kind of for Phil and a little bit for Bobby too. So people are just wondering what role, if any, could the Jefferson County Board of Legislators play, or what kind of role you have been playing already. Maybe Phil, you start, and then
Sure.
Bobby. Sure.
We've been an advocate since day one. I think kind of started with John Peach and Jake Tibbles and myself, and kind of grew concentric rings around that. But it basically came from the people of the area to have us get our voice out, and day after day after day to let people know how important this asset is to us, and to be their voice. And Assemblyman Gray and Legislator Cantwell have been very active in it. And as this has grown, it's been a great amount of people that are looking out for this unreplaceable asset. And I say this, and my other colleagues who are probably tired of hearing it, that this is my 20th year as a county legislator, and I don't think I've ever been on an issue that 100% of the constituents doesn't think this is a good idea. While they support the mission of CBP and realize that we need safe borders, they also realize the importance of Blind Bay. So I'll let Bobby chime in here.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Emma and Bridget. I'll just reiterate similar to what Legislator Reed said, but we do represent the people. This is not about, we're not anti. I think I'm reiterating something Jake said earlier, anti-CBP. We and their mission. We're not anti. It's all about proper siting, and that's been it from day one. And like Phil said, we represent the people. We're river rats, local. I personally bleed this place, and I think everybody here in this panel does. It's been from day one a bipartisan topic led by Senator Schumer. I did support Bonnie Castle. Once it shifted to Bonnie Castle, I thought that would have been a great site. But then again, it was removed from the list by CBP. And I wholeheartedly support the I-81 Cloverleaf property near the TI Bridge right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby and Phil, for commenting on that. So our next question is going to be directed to Dockside neighbor Jack Burke. Full disclosure, we've been having a little bit of issue with Jack's technology, so we're hoping it's going to work. So Jack, the question is, what are the general feelings of Dockside cottage residents leading into the summer season? So go ahead, Jack.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Yeah. Finally. Old guy, new technology. They did away with Skype today. Terrible. Yeah, there's about 29 homes spread across 3 homeowners associations that go around that property. And I'd have to say it's unanimous here too, very much against this property. Never really quite understood how we became part of the mix. It's a tight space. They have a 14-acre blueprint or footprint, and we're about that's about a 17-acre site. There would be drainage problems. We're all on wells here. There's no public water, which is one of their site criteria. Their biggest site criterion is, of course, from our viewpoint, is the zoning. We are zoned as marine residential with a scenic protective overlay, which is about as powerful a protection as you can get. There is some fine print in that law that says exemptions could be like police stations. So I guess that they could overrule us and come here. But we're like everybody else. We think it belongs, it totally belongs at the Cloverleaf location, and we've been, as I say, unanimous in support of that location, and unanimous in not wanting it in our backyard.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate the conversation also bringing up about zoning and things like that, since that's been a big issue. Pivoting a little bit, I want to take it back to back to Bridget. Blind Bay, if it's chosen for the new facility, we know there's going to be dredging that happens in the bay. Could you talk about how the aquatic environment would be affected by a disturbance like dredging? Oh, Bridget, you're muted, just like there. Thank you.
Trying to be all good, and then as Jake said before, what would mentioned in his presentation that dredging does cause a stir up of legacy chemicals, and particularly with Blind Bay because it's so pristine, unlike beaches we go to around here or places that are we're docking all the time. When a place that is so pristine that hasn't been swam on every day or ran on or boated on, those legacy chemicals have not been disturbed. And if they get disturbed, it's a little more remarkable on the science scale than other places. So those legacy chemicals would get into the water column, and they would be very dangerous for fish and potentially humans. When that happens, when there is dredging, it can change the flow of the river in that area, and potentially even cause some erosion upstream. So that's kind of a negative. But I think the biggest thing that we all know about is thanks to Dr. John Farrell and his muskie restocking program at the Thousand Islands Biological Station, that muskie breeding ground, if it got disturbed or it kind of got dredged out, that whole program, that muskie population would no longer be there. Muskies tend to come back to the same place. They spawn in the same place every year. They finish out their life cycles there. And as Dr. John Farrell said, it's even believed that they return to where they're born. So if you take that home away from them, they won't return. They really won't know where to go. And that is one of the lead things in why our muskie populations are decreasing, is loss of habitat. So those are the main ones.
Thank you, Bridget. So our next question is still on the ecology side of things, and this question is going to be directed to Jake. So what type of avian and bat surveys have been conducted at Blind Bay and Dockside cottages?
Yeah, good question. As mentioned during the presentation, Blind Bay or CBP did gain access to Blind Bay, and I want to say the beginning of August, the first 10 days of August, they had a contractor that conducted mist nettings, mist net days. We have just recently obtained the final bat survey reports for Blind Bay and Dockside cottages. We've also just received the biological resource assessment reports for both of those sites. We're in the process of analyzing those and kind of reviewing those to better understand the conclusions made by the bat consultant, but then also Gulf South Research Corporation, who carried out the biological resource assessments. Our hope is that we're going to be able to release those findings to the public, general public, in the next couple weeks. But as I mentioned, we've just put our hands on those through FOIL requests, and really want to digest what's in there before releasing for general consumption. I am able to report that no Indiana bats, northern long-eared bats, or tricolored bats were netted during the survey. Those three species are federally listed species and are generally seen as, if those species are present, they could essentially shut down a federal project. So that's what they were looking for. But there were several other species that were netted. And there were a few state listed species that were detected during the biological resource survey. So we should be having that information out to the general public here in the coming weeks, and folks will be able to see it firsthand and kind of interpret what's in those reports themselves.
Awesome, thank you. We're getting more questions in the chat, which is super excited. And my next question is going to be directed towards Scott, and then maybe Jake, if you can add a few things too. But we got a question: what is Stefanik's position and involvement on Blind Bay right now? For anybody who doesn't know, Elise Stefanik is the House of Representatives representative for District 21. It's just right next door to us. So Assemblyman Gray, if you want to answer that.
I respect the question, but I would be inappropriate for me to speak in terms of anybody else's position, right? I wouldn't represent, a county legislator position, and I don't intend to represent a congressional position as well. So that would be a question that'd have to be directed to her staff. So with all due respect.
Yeah, I would echo the Assemblyman's comments on that. And as we have navigated this issue, I mean, it spanned 3 years and likely to continue forward for at least another year. As you know, New York State redistrict. So the maps, they updated those maps. And from the beginning, the Blind Bay site, the Tibbles site, and also I want to say, Dockside Cottages site fell within Claudia Tenney's district, and Claudia has been engaged on this issue, has been supportive of our cause. So we're very fortunate for that.
Yeah, and I would echo that. So Elise really handles the eastern side of Jefferson County right now, and Claudia handles the river portion of it all the way up to the Jefferson, St. Lawrence County border. So that's when Elise picks it back up again. So it's really the congressional representative here is Claudia Tenney, and she has been very involved, very engaged. I think it's safe to say everybody knows what her position is. It's on the record that she's been supportive. So as has been Chuck Schumer. We have had a great relationship with Chuck Schumer, had a great relationship with the staff, Josh Perlman. So, and the governor, those are all people that are on the record with clear support of that. So.
Thank you, Scott and Jake, for answering that. Okay, so our next question is going to be directed to Phil Reed. And the question is, what actually is TIBA? And can you please speak to the role that TIBA has played in the Blind Bay issue?
Well, TIBA is the Thousand Islands Bridge Authority. It's the only authority in New York State that is under the auspices of a county, Jefferson County. So as TIBA goes, we go. I would like to say that Assemblyman Scott Gray set up a meeting with TIBA and stakeholders and representatives of Claudia Tenney and Senator Schumer, and it was very productive. They're open to talk about possibilities of things at the Cloverleaf and access to the river. So those are ongoing, but Assemblyman Gray set up a meeting, facilitated a meeting with all the parties. So I think it just goes to show that we're all looking for a solution that's palatable to everybody, to our visitors of the Thousand Islands, and for the safety. Again, I can't echo that. A lot of CBP people are friends, neighbors, constituents, and they're trying to keep us safe. So hats off to TIBA for actually listening to us and trying to be part of that conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. We have another question about TIBA, and I'm going to direct this kind of broadly, maybe Jake, Bridget, Scott, and then Phil, if you can answer it. We have a question about the specific parcels on the Tibba property. There's a little bit of confusion about where exactly the facility would go. So if maybe Jake, you want to start to explain where exactly we're looking at for a facility, and then take it from there, other panelists. Thank you.
Against my better judgment, I am going to pull back up that map that I quickly kind of skimmed over. So just bear with me, and hopefully I don't fall into a technological hole. So just give me one moment. So everyone should see that last Q&A slide that I had. Do you guys see that?
Yes, we can see it.
All right, see some nodding heads there. Okay, so I'm gonna go back. Oh. Can you see my cursor on the screen?
Yeah, we can see your cursor.
Okay. So we've nicknamed the Cloverleaf the I-81 interchange or on-ramp, off-ramp area as the Cloverleaf because it looks like a cloverleaf. The area outlined in yellow gives the general location that is being considered by the Thousand Islands Bridge Authority and Customs and Border Protection. These things are, as Phil mentioned and as Assemblyman Scott Gray mentioned, is ongoing. It's a fluid conversation, so this is approximate. But essentially, as you come off Route 12 and you access, what is the name of the road again? It's Collins Landing Road, I believe. The area of interest is on the right-hand side of the road as you approach the New York State Thousand Islands Bridge Welcome Center. So this location also provides hypothetically direct access via Collins Landing to that boat ramp that exists just below the bridge. So hypothetically, the CBP would be able to utilize a portion of that area to launch boats, dock boats, so on and so forth. So that's as much as we know at this time. But again, it's a fluid, ongoing conversation.
Awesome. Thank you, Jake. Do any of the panelists want to jump in and add anything before we move on to the next question?
No, I think that, so it's important to note so that this is kind of like pieces of parcels put together. There's a private landowner that's in there. The legislator Cantwell has, and I both have, I think he spoke with her, the realtor for that person. I've also spoke with a person, and Bridge Authority has a parcel in there. So it would be a combined parcel near Route 12, which would give them access for their rolling stock. And then if you follow the road down, there's a parcel right next to the road that would be their docking facility.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. So the next question is going to be directed towards Jack. It's about something that you mentioned earlier with the zoning. You said it's a scenic protective overlay. Could you explain more about what this means? And then also maybe Phil or Bobby, you can help us navigate the confusing land language. Thank you.
Well, I think I know what it means. There's about a 400-foot setback where you're not supposed to have development that protects from Route 12 on the north side. There are different parts of Clayton that designation. The property that's abuts our properties is in that designation. So it does have some protection from the marine. I mean, from the as the term says, scenic. It's supposed to keep it scenic, and our contention is that industrial scale building would not be scenic.
It's well said, Jack. It's a 400-foot overlay on the north side of Route 12. It runs east and west from the village of Clayton. So it's the entire township of Clayton, Cape Vincent town line to the town of Orleans town line. And it runs 400 feet to the river. Scenic Overlay District. It's something the town put in place. I can't remember the year, but I was on the town board at that time. So Jack described it very well.
Thank you, Jack and Bobby. Okay, so the next question is related to NEPA. So I'm going to give this question to Jake and Scott. So who is the ultimate decision authority within the NEPA process? And can you speak a bit to that, please?
That's a great question. The reality of it is, at least how I understand it, is that Customs and Border Protection is the authority. So under federal law, they have the discretion to enact eminent domain under NEPA. And so the NEPA process allows them to, it provides them that framework that they have to follow, obtain all the data, do the side-by-side comparison. Then they have the discretion to select a site. If they have a willing landowner, so if the selected site has a willing landowner, what I mean by that is if that landowner is willing to sell to that agency, then they will negotiate a price, or perhaps there was a predetermined price that's been negotiated, and then they proceed. Now, where NEPA, right, the act or the policy comes into play is if an entity or a community or a conservation organization believes that the NEPA process was not followed, or the decision made by the agency was not the appropriate decision because of environmental reasons, property value reasons, community impact, health reasons, then that entity or that community under NEPA has the ability to then challenge that decision. Ultimately, when you end up in what we refer to as a NEPA lawsuit, your battle isn't necessarily directly with Customs and Border Protection. The Department of Justice is engaged, and actually CBP becomes the client of the Department of Justice, and the lawsuit then becomes between the DOJ and whoever filed the claim. What it could have been the Thousand Islands Land Trust, but hopefully we're going to avoid that in this scenario. So not the best answer, but at least the best from my basic understanding of the process and kind of where we are in a moment of time.
Yeah, thank you, Jake. Our next question is for Bridget, and it's a little broad, but it's kind of about preserving the quiet and preserving the integrity of some of the more untouched or natural areas on the river. Could you just speak to the importance of preserving what little untouched areas along the river shoreline that we have? Like what that means? You're muted, so you're good.
It's been a long day. Yes, we all have our special spots here, and many of us have, our grandpa that came up here and and it's a beautiful place. We all love it. But there's something to be said about at some point, let's just leave it alone. Let's stop, as somebody said, let's stop loving it to death. I think the places like Blind Bay and these little inlets and little spots that are untouched, it's important to acknowledge them and leave them be. Leave some natural spots just to be natural. But I'm saying this with my environmental face, my Save the River face on, including like when you think of the sky and dark sky week and the lighting that's going on and how it's changing migratory patterns, and the boat traffic has increased over the last few decades. I think it's just really important to love what we have and appreciate what we have, and take a step and remember why we're all here, and it's to take a deep breath and look at the beauty and appreciate it, and just slow down. Let's just love it for what it is right now. I'll step down off my soapbox. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Bridget.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Okay, so I know we've talked a little bit about the position that Claudia Tenney and Governor Hochul have taken, but if we can speak to the specific roles that they have played within the Blind Bay issue, that would be great. And I will direct this to Scott and Jake. And Scott, if you want to start off, and then Jake, go ahead.
Yeah, so while Claudia is going to be, she's anybody on the federal level is going to be point with the CBP, number one. Number two, they're going to be point with the NEPA process. That's a congressionally directed process. So the governor is, through the authority that she has with the DEC, is going to be involved in that process. And one thing we will take a look at a little bit deeper is the new 300-foot buffer on wetlands within the DEC regulations that just took effect in January. So, but yeah, the governor has some regulatory role in this through the DEC. So.
I don't really have anything further to add on that question. I think Assemblyman Gray covered it on point.
Awesome, thanks guys. So our next question is going to be directed towards Phil. If the TIBA parcel studies reveal sensitive environment or other issues, will these, our organizations oppose that location as well?
You froze up for just a second. Can you
No
repeat
worries.
that?
I'll ask it again. So
Yeah.
the TIBA parcel is found to have sensitive environmental components to it. Will the town, and I guess Bridget and Jake can also speak to this, but will we oppose the facility being on the TIBA property?
Yeah, I'm gonna follow suit a little bit. I can't speak for the town, and I think we're cautious about speaking for other people. I know that I get rankled when people speak for me, so I'm a reed, and our voice is loud enough, I guess. So, but I think that everybody on all levels would see this as spoiling of a natural resource. For me, it's probably a little more. It's probably I'm very sensitive about it because I grew up in Fisher's Landing. I choose to live. I still call it Fisher's Landing, although I live on the farmer side of the road. I grew up ice skating on Blind Bay and fishing in Blind Bay, and I realize the importance of it. So, my job right now is to listen to my constituents, but my heart says that I, I really feel there's better spots and better solutions if we can all work together than to spoil that piece of property. I will say this, but when Representative Tinney was running for office, she jumped on a boat with Jeff Garnsey and a lot of us, and I think Jake showed a picture of it. And she's very interested in the welfare of our area, and expressed to me that she wants to work for a solution that works for everybody while maintaining national security. So I'm not speaking for her, but I was impressed that she jumped right on there and went for a ride with us too.
So
Thank you,
can I
Phil.
just jump in on this, if I may? Because on the TIBA property, I think specifically what it's important to keep in mind that is, first of all, it's right up close to the highway. So, and it's very important to know that the rolling stock with the CBP is significantly more than their water vessels. So they have a significant rolling stock pressure. And the other thing is just on the opposite side of the road, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Phil, is the New York State DOT facility. So there are like facilities in that area, which is why it is appealing. And we're very thankful that the Bridge Authority came to the table and entertained these discussions. And this was a community-driven decision or desire, let me just say that. And the Bridge Authority was gracious in the fact that they were willing to look at what parcels they had available that would be suitable for a situation like this. And so I think most everybody, I won't speak for anybody, but I think most everybody, because we all seem to be on board with this position, is because it has like facilities nearby it. We think it's ideal.
I'll echo the Assemblyman's comments too. I even liken it to locations of the cell tower or the radio towers when we were doing our project, Scott. And we actually moved the tower across the street to the state, the DOT site. And I remember, I'm sure you remember those comments. And people in my district, and I'm not going to speak for Bobby, but are more the Cloverleaf is a more palatable place for that type of facility, and I think it would be much more well received.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yep.
And,
And on the northern side of the Cloverleaf would be the state police barracks.
I want to also direct this question to Jake and Bridget about if the Tibba property is found to have some environmental significance, how would Save the River and TIL as environmental organizations kind of navigate all that? Maybe Jake can start.
You know, it's always hard to answer this type of hypothetical question. It's definitely a challenging one. I mean, the reality is any open space has some level of environmental value that's not only beneficial to wildlife, water, and people. So, you know, we'd want to weigh. That's one reason why we've made it clear that our goal is not to endorse any particular site, but to make sure that any community supportive alternative has a fair chance for inclusion in the SEA. If after the assessments, the biological resource assessments are completed, and there is found to be, you know, a critical resource, a threatened species, something there, then I think as we all should, we would go back to the drawing board, have conversations, deliberate, try to understand the best path forward. But beyond that, I really would just, I guess I would avoid answering that in any other definitive way. So.
Unfortunately, guys, I think I'm going to echo what Jake just said. I think it would be to look at it, like put the cards on the table and say this property would destroy this and this would destroy this. It'd be very difficult to do unless you knew exactly what was happening. Is one bird's nest gonna have to move a block down the road? Okay, we can deal with that. Or is an entire species gonna be obliterated? There's so many levels, it's difficult to know. But hopefully, we'll hope and pray that that's not the case. So we'll wait and see, but I hope we don't have to think like that. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone who helped answer that question. So the next question is going to be directed to Jake. How is information being received from CBP as they make their decisions?
That's a solid question. Tough one to answer. As folks can imagine, the Thousand Islands Land Trust and Save the River are not high up on the Christmas card list for Customs and Border Protection. So we receive limited information from them. That's why it has been critically important to engage our local, state, and federal representatives. Those individuals have played an important role. Your representatives have played an important role as conduits between our communities and the agency. And as the agency feels necessary, they disseminate that information to us. It's definitely not an ideal situation, and it really does make it hard for us to make informed decisions as we issue. But again, we're fortunate that we have the representatives at the table that we do. They've helped broker constructive conversations. So it's the best I can give.
Awesome. Thanks, Jake. Our next question is also for Jake. It's about NEPA, some of the environmental assessments, but we know that CBP was on the property last summer, but has there been any official assessments of Blind Bay or any kind of official environmental impact statements or, sorry, there's a big paragraph. But just any more things we need to know about what CBP found on the Blind Bay property.
So again, we have obtained final copies or final versions of the biological resource assessment conducted by Gulf South Resource Research Corporation, and then also the bat ecologist that Customs and Border Patrol hired to complete the MISNet surveys. We now have those final reports, but as I mentioned, we've just obtained them, and we're talking, one document's 100 pages long. So staff over the next week or so are going to be analyzing those. And really, before we get ahead of ourselves and make any kind of broad statement, we need the time to be able to really analyze those reports. So I'm going to kind of leave it there.
Yeah. Can you add a little bit about the importance of doing land assessments and also some kind of aquatic or water assessment, the difference between those two things?
Yeah, so they have conducted both for Blind Bay and the Dockside Cottages sites. So they look at the terrestrial assets, evaluating the specific types of habitats that are present. And then using those habitat types, they determine, what species might be present. Obviously, they only do these studies in a short window of time. So, there might be a northern harrier that flew over the property or utilized the property the week before they conducted the survey. So it's important that they do visual observations, both on the terrestrial side of things and the aquatic side of things, but then they take detailed, basically they take detailed notes on the habitat types, which then give them a full, kind of a broader or deeper understanding of what species would likely be present on those properties. I will mention, like, make an example. As I mentioned, they didn't observe, say, a Indiana bat or northern long-eared bat on the property, but they did conclude that the type of habitat that those species would generally use was present on the property, and that in the project area, which is like 1 to 2 mile radius around the site, that there is this percentage of, say, suitable Indiana or northern long-eared bat habitat. So it's very in-depth research. It's very technical in some cases, but they do look at both the aquatic end of things and the terrestrial end of things, including avian resources.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jake. So the next question is also going to be directed towards you. Will there be a full environmental impact statement at any point?
That's our hope. That is one of the steps in this NEPA framework. So they first move forward with the draft EA. If there are additional sites added, then they would need to conduct a supplemental EA, or another reason why they would conduct a supplemental EA is if public comment draws attention or brings light to a particular issue with one of the sites included in the NEPA process. That's why we're here today with the supplemental environmental assessment, because of the folks, the river community, Tilt Save the River, we brought forward many concerns, aspects of Blind Bay that were not known by Gulf South Research Corporation, the environmental consultant hired by CBP. So that's why they took that added step of doing the supplemental environmental assessment. Now, hypothetically, the agency has the authority to make the determination that once the final SEA is released, that in that SEA, they identify the selected site, whether that's Blind Bay, Dockside, or Tibbles. They select that site, and once that has been released for public comment, they technically have at least my understanding is that have the authority to decide whether or not they finalize that SEA and move towards construction, or they believe that there is still more that needs to be evaluated so that they would move forward with what's called a full EIS, environmental impact statement, which is a much broader assessment and evaluation of the potential environmental impacts that each site could potentially have. That is, if we get to the point where hypothetically, if we get to the point where three sites are standing side by side and the agency selects Blind Bay, that would be one thing that the Thousand Islands Land Trust, Save the River, and I would speculate that the river community would encourage and in fact implore Customs and Border Protection to move forward with completing.
Awesome. Thanks, Jake. Another reminder that NEPA is really confusing, and the more we can try to understand, the better. So thanks for explaining that. Just a little reminder, we're kind of closing in towards the end of the webinar. So if you do have a question, make sure to put it in the Q&A box before we end. This next question is going to be for Assemblymember Gray, and it's about Tom Homan. So given the connection, his connection to the North Country, what role, if any, do we believe that Tom Homan will play in this issue? I know he's kind of a hot topic right now, so thank you.
Well, so I just spoke to Tom this afternoon, as a matter of fact. So informal. He's obviously borders are, so he's doing something, and CBP is just one of the agencies that's underneath his responsibility. So Tom's really operating at a national security level, which is part and parcel to what's going on here. So I would say at this point it is informal, but he is a conduit. So I am able to speak with him. We talked twice this week, just a couple of days. I think it was, I don't even know what today is, but Monday, I think we talked. And then we talked again this afternoon as well. So and he's having conversations with the Customs Border Patrol Commissioner. So it's important to know that he was I think the commissioner is within 7 days of being confirmed. So keep in mind, this is a process, and everything is, although it's a very formal process, but everything has changed with the administration change. So had to make sure that the administration was going to stay on the same focus, and they're going to continue the process. The commissioner has just been seated, confirmed, and so he's like I said, 7 days on the job. So I think we will see some engagement, hopefully, at that point. But we can be assured that the commissioner is very well aware of the situation. So, Jake, I don't know about you. The last communication I have, just for everybody's, I think is what's important to note, was back in December of 2024 from Customs and Border Protection. So at that point, so just so everybody, at that point, what we had was, and I'll read you the paragraph if it helps people understand, says in July 2024, CBP notified stakeholders of its intent to complete natural and cultural resource surveys at the Thousand Islands Land Trust Tilt property on Blind Bay. These surveys were completed in September 2024. CBP is carefully reviewing the comments provided during the scoping period and the data obtained during the natural and cultural resource surveys for the incorporation into the draft SEA. CBP continues to evaluate potential locations for the proposed BPS, Border Patrol Station, that meet CBP requirements for the proposed action. At this time, 3 potential location alternatives, including 1 location at the I-81 Cloverleaf area, will be carried forward for analysis in the draft SEA. The draft SEA is anticipated to be released to the public for review and comment in late 2025. That's an excerpt of that letter. So everybody that's listening has an understanding of kind of what timing, and I think that goes back to an earlier question that Jake answered. So.
Yeah, thank you. And just a heads up for everybody, Assemblymember Gray is very busy, so we're in a little bit of a window of his time, which we appreciate. So just as a reminder to Scott and then everybody, if you do need to log off early before 7:30, totally fine. We're going to be going until 7:30. And Bridget has our next question.
Okay, and again, thank you, Scott. So our next question is going to be directed to Phil and Bobby. If Phil, you want to start off, and then Bobby, if you want to follow. The question is about zoning. So how does federal zoning supersede local zoning, and what's kind of some of the inner workings within that?
That's a great question. Scott, you might be able to chime in, or Phil,
I don't think we have federal zoning regulations at our disposal.
Yeah. So I would say there's local zoning that's involved, but obviously, as Jake, I think, has appropriately pointed out, it's the federal government, and they can, I guess this is kind of a coarse way of saying it, they can kind of step all over the local planning process if they want to, which the most egregious part of that would be the eminent domain. Now, having said that, DEC will still be, DEC will probably be in there for the long haul on this one. I would suspect from everything that we have, all the communications and conversations that I have had with DEC, I know Jake has been in very close communication with the regional director as I have been, and also with the governor. So as long as we have the governor on our side, DEC will be hanging in there with us as well.
Awesome, thank you. So our next question is for Jake and Bridget. It's about Mark Walczak's stance, what's his positioning, what's his involvement. And I'm also hoping you both can speak to the importance of working with federal representatives on this issue. We need local people also, but that dynamic as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. So Senator Walczak, he took a leave of absence for a little bit. I think he was on duty overseas. I'm not exactly sure. Military, his active military. I'm not exactly sure the particulars on that. So there was a stint of time where he was absent from this conversation. But right from the onset, if you guys remember that photo of the Bonnycastle Rec Center, one of the individuals standing up there in front of the rec center was Senator Walczak. So he has also been supportive of our position, believes that it's important that we broach constructive conversations, discussions with Customs and Border Protection to find that community supported alternative. I can't say if his position has changed. I think would be unlikely, but I would defer the specifics of that question to Senator Walczak. What was the other half? I think it was the other half of the question was the importance of engaging federal officials. It's straightforward, as Assemblyman Gray said. Our federal representatives, both in the House and the Senate, do have some sort of not control but purview over federal agencies, from a budgetary standpoint, from legislation. So they're very key and integral, play a very key and integral part of engaging with Customs and Border Protection, specifically the incoming commissioner of CBP. So, we understand, listen, we're environmental organizations, we're conservation organizations. We understand the sensitive topic of, working with, this representative or that representative. But when it comes from our vantage point, how we see it, our number one priority is to ensure that Blind Bay stays the way it is today forever. And so that if there are Republican senators or Congress persons or Democratic senators or congresspersons who are willing to step forward and support our position and help establish productive dialogues, then we have to work with those individuals, because that's the best interest of for Blind Bay and the broader river community. So, hopefully this issue continues to be bipartisan and it moves forward as such. It's been a great example of how representatives from opposite sides of the party line are reaching across and working collaboratively.
I want to echo what Jake said when it comes to preserving Blind Bay, exactly how it is. And when you are a charity, a non-for-profit like Thousand Island Land Trust is and Save the River, we don't see political differences. We're really not allowed to. So we just have that goal of keeping and preserving Blind Bay as it is now. And so really, as we've learned as a 501c3, we want anybody that's willing to see what we see and support us. Wonderful.
Thank you, Jake and Bridget, for that. So this next question is also going to be directed to Jake and Bridget. Jake, if you want to start off, and then Bridget, if you want to follow. Are there more follow-up studies that we're expecting this summer in Blind Bay, or has CBP said anything about accessing the Blind Bay property again?
So I just wanted to make a note. I see Phil's hand is up, just in case, once I finish answering, if you want to go back to him after Bridget, just to make sure he gets to speak. But so that's a question we've actually posed through our legal counsel to both Customs and Border Protection representatives and the attorneys that we negotiated the right of entry with through the Department of Justice. We've posed that question to them. So the terms of our right of entry provided Customs and Border Protection 1 year to access the property. I want to say that agreement was signed off in, I want to say, the end of July. So the exact date is eluding me. But so from that date, they'll have 1 year to access the property, and then would have to renegotiate terms of access. But right now, it's our understanding that they have completed all of the necessary studies per the letter that Assemblyman Gray just read. But we've posed that question to them.
I don't have anything to add to that. As the Thousand Island Land Trust being the owner, Jake would know more about those dates than myself. So, Phil?
Yeah, Phil, did you have anything to add about that? Okay, awesome. So that's going to conclude our Q&A session for today, but I just wanted to also give each panelist a second to say any more words, any takeaways that you want people to have. Let's start with Scott Gray, since I know he's probably got to go, and then we'll go from there.
Certainly. So first of all, listen, if people want to stay on, I'll be back on in about 3 hours if they'd like when we're done voting tonight. So we're about ready to take up another number 3 of 9 budget bills. So anyhow, first of all, let me just say thank you to the community. So they have been remarkable through this whole process. There was a lot of work that went in on all levels, from county legislators, myself, and the federal level, in order to get that public comment period held at the Clayton Arena, and to get it to be actually where more than just display boards, where there's actually going to be a period of time where people would speak and they would take all the comments, and to get it to 2 nights. And the number of people that showed up, that turned out for that, was phenomenal. And so that is indicative of what we're all trying to do here. We're working for the community, for the betterment of the community, on behalf of the river, and on behalf of the ecology of the river, right? And so it has really been critically important. So I'll give a shout out to the legislators, the Jefferson County legislators, my former colleague, both Bobby and Phil. They have done remarkable work on the ground with that. And then certainly the organizations, Tilt and Save the River, have been phenomenal in everything that they're doing. I think Jake is like an encyclopedia of this whole process. We could tell by the questions that were asked and the answers that were given. So it has really been just a phenomenal working group to be involved with, and to represent the community, and to try to make sure that we keep another level of government. And trust me, I know, being at the county level at one point, now at the state level, I know how the next level up can be heavy-handed to the level below it. And so we know how the federal government can be heavy-handed down to what the state or the local level. So we stand committed to make sure that the voices of the community are heard. So thank you very much for having me. And like I said, you're back on around 3.5, 4 hours. I'll see you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Scott. We appreciate it. I'm going to turn it over to Phil next, if you have any closing statements.
I do. I just want to say we still wear the colors. It's a little too warm in the house to wear this, but Save the River gave this to me, and I really appreciate it. And it's been a pleasure to work with everybody. I want to say thank you to our 2 youthful monitor that have done a fantastic job. And Scott's on the call, and appreciated him while he was getting acquainted in the assembly, jumped right in here with us, and Bobby and everybody on this call. I won't mention everybody's name, but I want to thank everybody's for their involvement. I would also like to thank, I hope he's listening right now, but John Peach, his heart and souls into saving this beautiful resource. I talked to him a little bit this morning, and hopefully he's doing well. But there wasn't for almost 2 years we talked, and if it wasn't every day, it was every other day. So, and the people, I want to also thank our constituents, Bobby and Scott, that they have demonstrated a lot of class and grace with defending this resource. And shout out to everybody that's on this call, and all our constituents. They are really classy people, but they're getting their point across that this is a resource that needs to be saved, and for a multitude of reasons. And while we understand the importance of national security, we also need to be good stewards of what's been given to us. So I want to thank everybody on this call, and everybody's dedication. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you. I'll
Turning
jump
it
in
to
next.
Bobby next.
Yeah, I'll jump in next. I don't want to reiterate everything everybody said. God bless Mr. Peach. Phil mentioned their constituents, the public. We do because of them. They elect us. We work for them. They have been nothing but top notch, as Phil said, through this whole thing and staying engaged. The engagement has been incredible. Tilt and Save the River are just phenomenal assets to our community. Thank you to the public for being so engaged in this, right? We can only do what we can do so far. We can have these meetings, we can talk to people, but we need the public's involvement. They've been very, very involved. So the thanks goes to them.
Awesome. Thanks, Bobby. And Jack, do you have any last comments to make?
Just that I was very happy to be part of this coalition, which is really great to see a grassroots effort take off like this and see the community involvement and the 100% behind trying to get it down to the cloverleaf where it belongs. So thank everyone for their efforts, and I hope that you can help us going forward.
Thanks, Jack. And Bridget, turning it to you next.
Sure. Oh my God, okay. I won't repeat everything that all assemblymen said and the legislators, because they said it all. I want to thank everybody that's been involved in this. John Peach as well for leading this off in the beginning with Jake. The staff, everybody's been fantastic, and working with Jake on this has been incredible. To see so many people that care about this and coming together, like it's been mentioned a few times, just 100% of the community is behind this. It feels very good. I want to give a shout out to Lloyd Withers for working on the timber property idea. That was pretty valuable as well. And everybody out there that cares, like, keep caring. We're here. We're staying in front of it. Stay with us.
Thanks, Bridget. And Jake, do you have any last things to say?
Last comment I would make is I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that if it wasn't for the swift action of Save the River, the Land Trust, all of the elected officials on this call tonight, and the thousands, I mean thousands, several thousand river, members of our river community, if it wasn't for their actions on the onset of this whole issue, I have no doubt in my mind that this facility would have already been built in Blind Bay. We're now over 3 years of navigating this issue. Over 3 years. It's likely going to reach the 4-year mark before we have a determination as to which site CBP selects. That's just a testament to this community's will to make sure that not only the local municipal townships, but the state and the federal government does the right thing. We have one opportunity to develop our river, and if we get it wrong, we can never go back and redo it. So, thank you for everyone's persistence. Thank you for your commitment, and thank you for your support. It's been a ride. Thanks.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, panel. This was a lot of fun. We got a lot of good questions. And just as people are logging off, here are the QR codes and links and different things that you can support the movement with. And we'll also be sending a follow-up email tomorrow morning with a recording of this webinar and a couple other resources for people looking to do more. But thank you, everybody. And yeah, great work.
Have a good night.
Thank you.